My name's Orlando Gough. I'm a composer. So a lot of what I get to do as a composer is to write choral music, and I write music for huge choirs, for tiny choirs, for amateur choirs, for children, for all sorts of people. On the Rim of the World, I actually started working on a very long time ago. When my kids were at primary school, I met at the school gate one of the other parents, Jeannie Markham, who's a poet. And we started writing pieces for children and adults in the school to perform together. And we started work on this piece. Something that fascinated us both was to do with going to bed and that time of night where things get really, really tricky in family life when bedtime has to be organised. And then very much about what happens after that. And about trying to go to sleep and the experience of trying to go to sleep in the middle of a huge city and what happens to your imagination when you do that. On the Rim of the World was a really, really unusual commission for me, and I think indeed for anybody actually, because I was asked to write it by 7 opera houses. First performance was at Glasgow, and then that was followed by a very big kind of expansive, exuberant performance on the main stage of the Royal Opera House in London, which was very exciting. A huge set, huge cast, 300 people. Even on that enormous stage in that opera house, 300 people is really an immense amount of people. A very clever design solution to the problem of seeing what 300 people are doing on the stage. There's a kind of diagonally strung mirror, so that in the audience you could, as well as looking straight at the performers, you could look down on the performers and see what the kind of crowd choreography was like. And then after that it was performed at Welsh National Opera, also in a really interesting way, in the foyer of the Millennium Centre in Cardiff, which is quite a complex kind of space, lots of staircases and all sorts of stuff going on, and it was staged all over that space, which is really, really a nice idea. And it felt, of course, completely different from seeing it in the theatre. And now there's this prospect of doing it here in the Sitz, which is, again, very, very different. It's quite an intimate kind of theatre. I mean, it's fairly large, but it's very nicely designed, so the audience is very close to the stage. And that will be a very different matter. Much, much smaller cast, but a very different situation in which the kind of intimacy of the piece will, I think, really come over. One of the really interesting things for me about this production is the collaboration between Sitz Theatre and the Scottish Opera. Certainly down south where I live, Citizens Theatre has a reputation for kind of being quite gritty, for working a lot out in the community, whereas one thinks of opera as being sort of toffee-nosed and elitist. And to bring these two together in this way seems like a really, really fantastic step forward, because it's just not like anything I've ever come across before. Much more a kind of informal feeling, and it doesn't feel like the rehearsals of an opera at all, which for me is just great. I was just absolutely bowled over by the rehearsal. It really went extremely well, and it was fantastically kind of robust sound for great singing from both the children and the adults. And there's a very, very nice youth orchestra, Connect Orchestra, who are playing music that I wrote really with adults in mind and making a very, very good job of it. The conductor Chris doing a fantastic job, and there was a very, very, very nice atmosphere in the room. And I could immediately see that it was going to work. Some interesting design elements, like this bed you can see behind me, huge bed which you can fit more or less the whole cast on. So that there's a really beautiful moment at the end of the piece where you see 50 people kind of going to sleep together on a bed, which is amazing.